to illustrate short division, I want to keep it simple and not use values which we may struggle with if our times table isn't very strong. So I'm going to start by looking at using 2. So we'll start with 2 into 284. Now it's very important to realize how this works. We'll start by thinking about 2 into the very first digit we see, so in this case it'll be 2 into 2, and then we'll consider 2 into the next digit, in this case the 8, and finally 2 into the final digit, which in this case is the 4. Okay, well let's do that. Well, 2 into that first 2, well that is 1, and we therefore place the 1 directly above that digit, and then we say 2 into 8, well that goes 2, 4, 6, 8, that's 4 times, so we record our answer there, and finally 2 into this final 4, which is just 2. I've kept it nice and simple with this very first example in order just to see how the structure of mapping across, this idea of sliding across one digit at a time, is visually how we do this. Of course there were no remainders there, so let's see how remainders fit in. So let's find a more challenging question, 2 into 36. So again we say 2 into the first digit, which is 3. Now 2 doesn't go into 3 exactly. It does go in once, but there's 1 left over, and the remainder we record always below the line. And notice where I put it, next to that 6. So now we consider 2 regarding going into the next digit. In fact, we now see it as 2 into 16, not 2 into 6 by itself. The remainder has impacted. So 2 into 16, once you work it out, is 8 times. And most of you will be pretty familiar with this. I appreciate this is simply a reminder for many of you as to how this works. Let's make a little trickier still. Let's now do 2 into 162. When we do 2 into that first digit, into 1, it definitely does not go, and it doesn't go with any remainders. It simply doesn't go. Now most of us would be quite comfortable with what to do next, and that is to simply say, well okay, just think about 2 into 16. Most of us I think would happily do that, and that goes in 8 times. Look where I record that 8, however, it's above the end of the 16. This idea of putting the place very carefully will come into its own once we drift into the decimal region. But 2 into 1 didn't go, 2 into 16 is 8, and then 2 into 2 is 1. So our final answer is 81. Now let's look at another one where we have a similar concern regarding a number that doesn't go. Here we're doing 2 into 6, 1, 2. Now 2 into 6 goes exactly 3 times. But now when we say 2 into the next digit, into the 1, it doesn't go. But here, rather than just ploughing on and saying 2 into 12, we must record the fact that we said didn't go and put a 0. This is very different to the last example, and the difference comes out as follows. If you have already started the answer we have here, we put a digit 3, then thereafter you must put a 0 whenever you say doesn't go. Whereas with the previous example, let me remind you what it looked like. The previous example, we hadn't started the question when we said 2 into 1. We hadn't started recording an answer, so we could just do the carry and say 2 into 16 straight away without concerning ourselves with recording a 0. Anyway, we've done 2 into 6 is 3, 2 into 1 doesn't go, record it as a 0, and then 2 into 2 is 1. So that is a kind of question that does start to trip some people up, does start to catch some people out. So one has to be very careful when it doesn't go, how do you record it? Okay, last example, 2 into 83. Now 2 into 8, well that goes 4 times. 2 into 3, well that goes once with 1 left over. Now at this point some people remember from school to put something like this, because they've reached the end of the question and they say, oh, the answer is 41, remainder 1, I'll write it as 41R1, or even more confusingly 41.1. Neither of those is acceptable, and the second one of those is most definitely wrong. Let me show you what we do. When we have a remainder and we finish with all our digits, so here 2 into 3 is 1, remainder 1, the remainder, as I said earlier, always goes below the line. But we now have a problem. We've run out of digits below that line, and yet our answer hasn't become complete. What do? Well, you may recall that we simply rewrite 83 as 83.0, and that permits us to continue the question. There's a decimal point there, so I put a decimal point on the top, and then that little one gets stuck in our mind's eye to the 0 to make 10, so we can then say 2 into 10 goes 5. So the rule here is when you have a remainder that has occurred and sits momentarily by itself, as it did do before that 0.0 was written down, when that occurs, that's when you go decimal. This will become a little clearer the more we do more examples, but I'll stop there on this part. Thank you.